Before I learned about any of the chants or herbs, both my teachers spent the first few weeks in admonishment. Daniel told me, "I chose you because you're not a vengeful type of person. You're going to be in charge of powers that can hurt people. If someone slights you, you must not be tempted to use that power to get back at them. That's not always easy because we're human beings. We have feelings. We have hurts. And yet, at that time, we can look to a higher being who has wisdom. We have small knowledge, but he has knowledge beyond that. So let him take care of acts against us. You turn it over to him, saying, 'You know better. Please take care of this for me,' is actually the greatest warfare we can engage in. It takes great character to be able to say that and mean it. I was taught not to fix medicine for myself. I can ask someone to do it for me, but for myself I can't. If I do, that would be about all I could do from then on, and I wouldn't be able to help anyone else. Even though it all comes from the same source, a medicine person goes in one of two directions, either working to help others or working to help himself. Whichever way he chooses, he has to stay with that. Along with good medicine, I had learned some of the ways of those who work with the dark side so that I would be able to help the victims of such acts. For instance, sorcerers can plant foreign objects in a person's body that will fester and cause an infection. The person can even die if not treated properly. I had to learn how such objects were implanted in order to know how to remove them. I learned those dark ways only for that reason, and that's why Dave and Daniel cautioned me a lot. In fact, I turned down one chant. I told Daniel Beaver, if there is any way I don't have to learn to take a human life, it will be okay with me. He did teach me how to take the life of an animal, but I didn't want to be able to take the life of a human or to make them sick. He honored my request, but later on I realized that humans are also animals, so the particular chant he taught me can take a human life. Daniel didn't tell me that. He let me figure it out for myself. As he or she nears an age when it feels right to pass those things on, the Creek medicine person normally picks a minimum of 4, but preferably 7 apprentices. Each of the 7 passes on to 7 more. That way, the medicine of that lineage goes on and on. One of my teachers passed on his ways to only 2 of us. At the time he selected me, he saw no others who were qualified. In the beginning of my medicine training, there were many, many lessons and tests I had to go through. I had to learn about herbs, bark of trees, the inner parts of trees, leaves, and how to recognize them in each season, even in winter time. Then I learned how to care for them after I got them. Some of them were never let touch the ground again. We'd pick them up and would hang them under the eaves of the porch. If you ever went to a medicine person's house, there were many herbs hanging all around. Then there are the chants we use. Some of the chants carry a power from way back in time. I consider myself an expert in our language to a certain point, yet some of our medicine songs have words in them that are so old I have no idea what they mean, but they affect the result. The medicine people of our tribe received their medicine through fasting and asking for guidance and help from above. That's where a great deal of our medicine ways came from. During the time of fasting, the Creator might reveal a chant or where to find a particular herb and give instructions on how to use it for treating different types of illnesses. They would go out and fast 7 days to become a medicine person. The medical professor says a person can't last more than 4 days without food and water, but we like to do things cantankerous and contrary, something that was handed down to us from a long time ago. We try to like it, and being of the Aries sign, when it says don't That's an invitation to me. I had to go on many fasts to learn these medicine ways. I have fasted as long as 7 days, but some of those old people stayed up there 14 days without food or water in order to get these teachings. Those were very powerful medicine men. In the river at midnight. In addition to learning the chants and herbs, my training included many tests designed to test my character and faith. One of the first took place at a time Dave Lewis had me stand in the river at midnight. He gave me a little white stone and said, "Swallow it. That's your staying power. Regardless of what happens, whatever you see, you stay put. But you still have a choice. If you can't stand it, you can swim away. But that's as far as your training is going to go. If you want to learn something, stay put. It's up to you." I was determined to stay put even though I had no idea what might happen. I stood chest high in the waters of the South Canadian River that flow through Oklahoma as the clouds moved by, turning the night sky from dark to bright and dark again. As I stood there, looking upstream, I saw something just below the surface of the water going up and down. I could see little glimpses in the moonlight of something like a cow with little tiny bells on the tips of its horns approaching me. I don't know what the bells were made of, but they weren't brass or man-made. They were part of the cow itself. Tiny bells making little tinkling sounds. It was coming right at me, and when all of a sudden it went down under the water and went right by as I stood there. That wasn't all. Next I saw 2 giant arms with long fingers like tentacles coming toward me. At that last minute they passed me by and went on. Well, that wasn't so bad, so I stood there. Then something kept bobbing up and down, and a great snake with 4 heads came at me. That one really got close, but I held my ground and it went on by. As it passed me, I heard a song, which came to me in such a way that I could repeat it after that. That's when Dave asked me to come up and relate everything I saw. Did you hear anything? I heard little bells. What else did you hear? I heard a song. What was the song? Sing it. I sang it for him, and he said, "That snake gave you a song that you will be able to use in court situations. You can use it to fix tobacco, to help our people be treated fairly." I had to undergo many such tests in order to be open to receive the power of songs. Some are so powerful that sometimes no herb is needed. To fix an earache, all we do is say a chant and blow on that ear. If someone cuts himself and is bleeding and can't get to a doctor for a tetanus shot, take dirt, fix it with a chant, and put the dirt on the cut. First the pain goes away, then the bleeding stops, and there will not be any infection. Once, when I was spending the night with my grandson in Los Angeles, he was slicing up some cheese and included his finger in the slicing. I went outside, got some dirt, and blew a little chant on it, then put dirt on his finger. That bleeding stopped and the pain went away, and in no time that wound was healed. It took a great deal to learn things like that. I was taught how to suck poison out of a person's body. That took a lot of training. When I suck the poison out, I have to know how to keep from swallowing it myself. I have a protection song that I sing before I do it, but still it's a very delicate procedure, and because of it, Dave and Daniel told me, "Your teeth will go bad early," which they did. I tried to brush them really well, but the poison still weakened my teeth. Sometimes the sucking part would be so intense that my gums were sore for days afterwards. A lot of stuff is pulled out through sucking, but the smell is real bad and it can make you nauseated. Then you've got to know how to close the opening from which the poison came, because if you don't, that patient could get an infection. There's a chant you can sing when you blow on the wound. This closes it up so that no one would ever know was even there. Lying on an anthill. These ways had to be tested for me to really know how to bring about results, and I always had the option to quit at any time if it got too rough for me. I was put on an anthill as part of my training, but not by Dave Lewis or Daniel Beaver. This teaching came from a Seminole man who was a clan relative of my father. The only name that I knew him by was No-Casil, meaning bear paw. Bear paw didn't live near me, but when I was in my early 20s, he came to visit and said, "I'm getting sickly now and way up in age. I don't have much time left to spend with you, but I do want to put you through this one test because it will carry you through many situations where you will need to exert self-control." He took me out to a huge anthill near our house in the country. It was about 3 feet across, and he told me to lie on it. All I had was on a pair of trunks, and those big red ants crawled all over me. I wanted to brush them off, but I was afraid I might kill one, so I just laid there and let them crawl. The sun was so hot, I had to close my eyes, and they even walked across my eyelids. Yet never did one bite me. That was one of my tests, teaching me how to exert self-control. Bear Paw told me, the Bible says, if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. It means that you don't have to resort to force. You don't have to defend yourself when you have faith. If you didn't believe that, there would have been resistance on your part, and the ants would have bitten you. This lesson in self-control is to condition you to have acceptance and faith in your own life. There are many, many instances in life when people tend to get excited. A fire breaks out, and they forget where the exits are, and many people can get trampled because of panic. Regardless of what happens, never hit the panic button. Maybe there's an earthquake taking place. Don't run out and hurt yourself. Try to stay calm. See this thing through. It's a part of nature. You are a part of nature. Go with it. That's what I learned from lying on that anthill. Little Beaver and the Old Seer. When I started my training with Dave and Daniel, I was still in high school, having stayed out of school to help at home. I graduated from high school in 1938 when I was 20, and the next year I went to Bacone College in Muskogee, Oklahoma, where I majored in psychology. It wasn't too far from home, so I was able to continue my studies with both my teachers during college. Dave and Daniel lived way out in the country, and it was hard for them to get around. Each time I went to see them, I took some groceries with me. Then I would leave some cash so they could get anything else they needed. There was no talk about it whatsoever. It was an understood thing among my people that we took care of the elders in that way. When I arrived, I was ready, and we went right into the business of their teaching me. Our people are very patient. You think they've forgotten, and they say, "I want you to come over." I didn't study with them on a daily basis. Maybe a week or two or even a month would go by between my sessions with them. That way I'd have time to digest what I learned and know it completely before they took me to the next step. That's why my training with these two teachers took 14 years. I learned from both of them, alternating each month. One month I'd go to Daniel Beaver, and the next month I'd go to Dave Lewis. The teacher who approached me first was Daniel Beaver. His Creek name was Chokii Kashwa, Little Beaver. And when he started teaching me, he was around 60 years old. His leg had been amputated, and he was blind from diabetes, but he still was alert in mind. Every time I visited him or went to him for more instructions, I gave him a gift of tobacco first thing. That's our way of showing respect. He accepted it and touched it all over like something very dear to him, and he put it aside. Daniel always had beech nut chewing tobacco in his mouth, and even when he was talking, he'd expectorate into a nearby can and then talk some more. He had special tone to his voice, and once he started talking, that tone never wavered. When he was through with one sentence, he would continue, not with a conjunction such as and, but with a sound like the grunt of a bear. Daniel recalled stories and songs from memory and had the ability to paint pictures with words. Whether you understood the language or not, it was a joy just to listen to the sound of his voice as he went along making various sounds and tones. It was an old man's way of recalling from way back. He was telling me this is how it was. He told me that there are some places on earth that make you feel as though you've been there before, and there are other places where you're not very comfortable. Before this century, our elders had no knowledge of the magnetic pull between the North and South poles. Scientists have since established that migrating birds know which direction to take by following the magnetic pull from the Earth, and our bodies also respond to these magnetic forces. If you're right on the magnetic alignment of north and south, you feel good. But if you're not on the magnetic lines that you're accustomed to, if, for example, mountains are hampering that pull in a certain way, you don't feel quite right. The elders understood this and had a way of aligning themselves to tolerate uncomfortable places when they traveled. They would stand facing either south or north and sing certain songs over and over until the people felt better. Daniel also talked about children getting restless when the tribe came upon new land. Perhaps they were fleeing from the enemy and needed everything quiet. There were many different energies in a new land, and they couldn't know all that might have gone on before, or what entities might be present. Whenever the tribe arrived in a new camp, the medicine man had a blessing song he would sing so the energy would be calm and the children would sleep through the night without crying. Through their medicine ways, they put everything in a peaceful situation. When I sponsor a vision quest and arrive on the land, I still use this way of blessing the entire area surrounding the people who are going to be questing. That sets the stage for keeping in contact with the people who I send up the mountains to the quest, and I maintain that contact until the last one comes back down. It would have been very hard for Daniel to take me out and give me physical tests, so he focused on teaching me the chants and herbs. All my difficult physical tests came from my other teacher, Kitha Choli, old seer, who was also known as Dave Lewis. He was skinny and wiry, but very strong, and he lived to be a very old man. Dave was the funny one, seeing humor in most everything. He would tell me to fast all day on Friday, even at school or work, then come to his house that night so he could work with me. That was pretty easy when I was in high school and college nearby, but after I graduated from college, I was working in Oklahoma City, and it was nearly 200 miles to his house in Eufaula, Oklahoma. So he'd often be sound asleep by the time I got there. He'd leave the front door unlocked and a very dim light on so I could see my way around. He was hard of hearing and knocking didn't help, so I just open the door, go to his bedroom, and wake him up. He'd look and say, "I ought to report you to the authorities for breaking into my home." He knew what I was there for, but that was his usual way of greeting me. He liked to tease a lot. Most of our medicine men have a lot of humor, and Dave was really good at twisting things around. He didn't make fun of people. He was the kind of person ready to laugh at himself more than anyone else. He told me that in treating patients, humor was the best way to break down any barriers or skepticism and help them to view him as a human and down to earth. He was very sensitive to the needs of the people, and he always told me that no matter how serious the situation, He must always maintain a balance between being a healer and being a human. And that way we are able to empathize with a patient much better than if we take the attitude, they've come to see me because I'm a respected medicine man and I must be on my best behavior. Dave told me that's not the way to take care of the medicine. Be honest in dealing with people and let them see the humorous side of you as well as the serious side. The two go hand in hand. If you make them laugh, they'll forget their troubles for a little while. Then you can explain to them what you're going to do with the medicine, how they've been affected by the illness, and how this medicine will offset that illness. Explain everything to the patient before making the medicine. That increases their belief that you know what you're doing. That in itself is healing. Do you know this chant? Dave told me you're going to go through many fasts because you can only retain when you're not full. When you're full, distractions come. You must be a clear channel in order to learn the songs and chants. Sometimes I'll teach you a chant. Later on, I'll tell you what it means. We'll put many of these chants to the test to see if they have accepted you and will work for you. In my second year with him, Dave sent me up a mountain to fast for a vision and told me to come visit him on the 4th day of my fast. As soon as I got to his house, he said, "Are you ready?" We didn't sit around and talk for a long time, although we could have. I could have listened to him all day because he made me laugh a lot. He said, "The snake song that I taught you, do you know it?" I said, "Well, you know how it is with knowledge. I can sing it, but I can't be certain whether I know it or not because I haven't experienced anything except singing it." You gave the right answer. We're going to find out whether or not you know it. We walked quite a ways from his house to a knoll, a little tiny hill with a tree on the far side. It was hot and humid August day in Oklahoma, and that tree afforded the only shade and the little gully on the other side of the knoll. I didn't know what to expect. He had me give him my shoes and socks. Then he pointed and said, "I'm going around to the other side of the hill. I'll be standing there waiting for you." He kept looking at the little knoll in front of us and saw a rock with an opening on the top that looked oily. I asked, "Is this part of an oil well or what? I wonder if they drilled oil here." He said, "Here I go," and took off. When he reached the other side, he called me. "Anytime you're ready, start that song. The 4th time through, start walking toward me. No matter what you see or hear, you keep singing and walking until you get to me." So I started singing that snake song, and I began it for the 4th time. I walked to the top of that knoll, then I knew why part of that rock was oily. I was looking at a rattlesnake den. The oily spot was where the snakes had been crawling back and forth. Down below was nothing but rattlesnakes lying in the shade from the tree in that hot afternoon. I was barefoot and I could hear each of them rattling. I could see their fangs as their necks arched backwards, ready to strike any time. And there I was, walking among them, singing for all I was worth. I kept singing and I didn't stop. I can't say that I wasn't afraid. I definitely had some tense moments and thoughts. But when you're singing a medicine song that you've been authorized to use, the power that you feel is hard to describe. There's a certain quality there that's not a matter of voice. Maybe you have a squeaky voice, or it breaks in different directions when you hit a certain note. It's the feeling, the belief, the faith you have that this song came from way back, and you are now being entrusted with its care. It's something that's been preserved and taken care of by the elders of our tribe for a long time. Now it's being shared with you, and you're trying your very best to stay at that same level of care and love. I knew that in time this song was going to help people. Dave would tell me how, but for the moment, it was taking care of me. I kept singing as I heard the snakes rattling their tails. Many of them were reared up, the position to strike. But I kept singing, and as I walked, they backed up, making a path for me. When I reached the other side, Dave, true to his word, was waiting for me. He pointed to the biggest snake in the group and said, "That's the grandfather. Pat his head 4 times, and then come up here with me." Still singing, I walked over to the snake, patted his head 4 times, and then went on up to where Dave was standing. Then I finished the song. Dave told me, by singing that song 4 times, you put them in a trance. By patting the grandfather, you broke that trance so they could all go back to normal, to the power of the snake. That was just one of many tests I had to go through, and knowing that song is why no one I send on vision quests has ever been bitten by a rattlesnake, even in rattlesnake season.